Live outside Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Thank you, Kaylee Hartung, for filling in for Christine Romans. We leave you with the front pages from the Boston papers as the Patriots are Super Bowl champs for a sixth time. John Berman celebrating as New Day takes over from here.
We have now set the table beautifully. Everybody knows what's going on because of the shutdown.
He's getting increasing pushback. The president has to see Tuesday as a moment to reunify Republicans behind him.
The president is dead set on keeping his campaign promise. I support border security, whatever it takes.
To the end zone, and it's intercepted at the 3-yard line.
I'm so happy for my teammates. This is a dream come true for all of us.
It's all about the players. These guys worked so hard all year. They played like champions.
This is New Day with Allison Camerata and John Berman.
All right, welcome to our viewers in the United States and all around the world. This is New Day. It's Monday, February 4th, 6 o'clock here in New York. Allison is off. Poppy Harlow joins me. Long time no co-anchor.
I'm just glad they won, so you're smiling.
I was thinking you must be so psyched that you picked today to come in and sit next to me.
Course.
Are you ready for this? They say you always remember your sixth time. And no one will ever forget the Patriots' sixth Super Bowl title, 6 rings for Tom Brady to go with the crown he deserves for being king of the universe. This is the front page of the Boston Globe today. It says, Dynasty rolls on. And let me just clarify, this is this morning's paper, not the one from 2 years ago or 2 years before that or 2005 or 2004. You get my point where I'm going here.
Endless.
Last night in Atlanta, the oldest coach-quarterback duo in Super Bowl history, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, defeated the youngest, Sean McVay and Jared Goff. It was 13-3, Super Bowl 53, the lowest scoring Super Bowl ever, taking home MVP honors. Julian Edelman, he caught 10 passes for 141 yards, which is 9 more catches than he had in his entire college career.
Can I just go home now?
Yes.
I don't think I'm needed until at least half an hour into this show. I'm just going to let you take over. I feel bad saying this next to you, Berman.
It's true.
This was kind of the snooze bowl. It ranked as very low on the excitement scale. There was even that interesting Mercedes-Benz tweet and then delete about the stadium, which we'll get to in a little bit. But it was historic, as Berman just laid out for you. And if you're one of the millions of Patriot haters, which I am not, their skill is real. I am not a hater. I just wish, the Vikings would do it a little more often. This is the end of a dynasty. That's what you were hoping. No, you're out of luck. And by the way, Tom Brady is not going anywhere anytime soon. Let's go to Coy Wire. He is live in Atlanta with the highlights of the big game. My friend, if folks went to sleep like I did, walk us through it.
Yeah, so Poppy, John, good morning to you. There are so many ways that we can remember this Super Bowl. It's 2 of the highest scoring offenses in the league, only combining for 16 points. Bill Belichick becoming the oldest coach to ever win a Super Bowl at 66, or because John Berman will never let us forget that Tom Brady, despite not throwing a single touchdown pass, wins a 6th title. Let's walk you through it. It did not start off well for you, did it, John? Kind of worried here. On his very first pass attempt of the game, Tom Brady dropping back, looks right and throws it. Interception. And nothing really came from that, though. That kind of set the tone. It was a lot of defense. Great for guys like me who played defense in the NFL. Bad for people who love offense. But late in the game, here we go. 4th quarter, Rob Gronkowski gets the team down to the 1-yard line there. And Sony Michel, who lost the college football national championship while at Georgia a year ago on that very field, scores the only touchdown of the game. Jared Goff, late in the 4th quarter, would have a chance to prove he's savage. He throws one to Brandon Cooks, and a great defensive play there. Breaks it up, and on this play, an all-out blitz by the Pats. Jared Goff proves he is not savage. He is not Tom Brady. An interception by Stephon Gilmore, and the confetti is flying. There you have it, 13-3, your final. And would you believe those 10 points is the largest margin of victory for the Patriots in any of their Super Bowl wins? After the game, Hines caught up with Tom. Is he the GOAT now? He asked him.
What does it mean to win 6, man? You're the greatest of all time.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I don't think about that. I just think I play with so many great guys on so many great teams, and I still get to do it. 41 years old, play a sport I grew up loving, and proud of my team tonight.
What about Jules, man?
He was like Lil Hines Ward tonight, wasn't he?
He balled out, man.
He played his butt off, and I knew he was going to play his butt off. He was so focused, and we needed him big time, and he came through.
Congrats, my brother.
Thanks, babe.
Yeah. MVP of the Super Bowl. What does that mean?
It's pretty crazy.
Is it surreal?
It's pretty surreal. I'm still,
You're not going to sleep tonight. I guarantee you that.
I don't know yet. I just want to say hello to my little baby girl, Lily. I love you. I miss you, and I can't wait to see you.
All right, so Julian Edelman, you noted to it earlier, John. The guy wasn't recruited out of high school. He played quarterback at Kent State, and there he is, your Super Bowl MVP. And that confetti you saw flying, John, I got you some from the field, so you will have that coming to you via mail there in New York. A little token for you. We do have to talk a little bit more about the halftime show, okay? Because this was highly anticipated, as it always is. And there you see Maroon 5's Adam Levine. And if you're a Maroon 5 fan, you would say this was great. Some say it was a little too much Maroon 5. Some called this performance trite and artless. Many hoping that the band would pay a tribute or a nod at least to Colin Kaepernick or social activism or the Take a Knee movement. There was none of that. There was a lot of Adam Levine, though, as you see. Very little big boy from Outkast, Atlanta's own. He did roll out in a Cadillac at one point, paying tribute to the rich hip-hop and rap culture here in the city. For the most part, though, many thought, like the game itself, the halftime show was a bit of a snooze fest. So there you have it, guys. John Berman, congratulations to you yet again. I feel I have said this to you way too many times during my time here at CNN reporting on the big Super Bowl.
Coy, thanks very much. Look, it was not a good game, but you know how many other teams would like to win a game that bad? All of them. All of them.
Go. Have the world seen your mug?
No,
Can we please? Because this wonderful woman in our lives, Lisa Zay, right?
Yeah, Lisa.
Our colleague.
I don't know if you could push in closely enough, but the important thing to know here is there are two faces on here. I don't deserve to be on this mug, but it's me and Tom Brady put all over the mug right there. And just one last thing. I don't have a Patriots tie, but I do have a Red Sox tie.
Yeah, because they're
Because it was 85 days since they won the World Series. I'm very sensitive to the fact that I don't want to lose all of our viewers by gloating about the Patriots all day, so we should probably
Can I
move
go
on.
home now?
Yes.
All right, but let's turn to politics. Congrats,
please.
Berman.
Thank
I'm
you.
very happy for you and all the Pats fans. So to politics, we do have a brand new CNN poll this morning on how Americans feel about the president and the prospects of whether the president and Congress can strike a deal to avert another government shutdown on February 15th. On the eve of his State of the Union address, the president's approval rating stands at 40%. Our political director, David Chalian, with us this morning on our new poll numbers. I'm fascinated by this poll. His approval is slightly higher, and there's some really interesting nuggets in here.
Indeed. And Poppy, you know, we've seen Donald Trump operates within a very narrow band, but you're right. He's now coming back a little bit, an uptick. Take a look. He's at 40% now, as you said. In January, during the shutdown, 37%. He was at 39% right before the shutdown. Clearly, having the shutdown over has helped him a little bit here, but it's all within a range. Take a look at how he stacks up to his predecessors as they were about to give their third State of the Union address. Take a look here. Only Ronald Reagan in 1983, at this point in his presidency, was below where Donald Trump is now. Now, that may give Donald Trump hope. You'll recall Ronald Reagan went on to win a resounding victory for a second term, but Trump's still near the bottom of the heap here. As for the deadline that we're facing 11 days from now with government funding, the country is rather pessimistic that there will be any deal. 64% of Americans tell us in this survey by SSRS that no deal is likely between Congress and the president. And what about the potential solutions there? Take a look at this. 39% only support shutting down the government again if no wall funding. 57% oppose another shutdown. How about that action of a national emergency that Donald Trump has telegraphed may be announced in the State of the Union? 2/3 of Americans say he should not declare a national emergency. Only 31% says he should. And here's the trick. This is the box Donald Trump is in. You just saw majorities oppose another shutdown, oppose emergency action, but majorities of Republicans support them. That's the box Donald Trump's in. And now, of course, he's going to be facing a new reality in Washington. When he takes to the House chamber tomorrow night, you'll see Nancy Pelosi above his shoulder. 51% of Americans say that the Dems in Congress should take the country in the direction. Only 40% say that about Trump. And here you see Speaker Pelosi's favorability rating is really on the rise. She was at 34% before the shutdown. She's now at 42% favorability. She hasn't had a number like that in CNN polling since 2007. This is largely due to Democrats, specifically liberal Democrats, getting more and more enthusiastic about their view of Speaker Pelosi. John, Poppy?
David Chalian, great to have you here. Thanks for sharing this historic morning with us.
My pleasure.
And I know you're going to join in this conversation. Also joining us are Margaret Talev, senior White House correspondent for Bloomberg News, and Joe Lockhart, former Clinton White House press secretary, who also worked for the NFL. I'm just putting that out there since football is a theme this morning.
Why not?
I have to say, Joe, I'm actually fascinated. As Poppy was saying, there's a lot in this poll if you dig in deep. If you look at the president's approval rating now, which is 40%, and look at where it was in January, which is 37%, and also before the shutdown, 39%. Look, you can say it ticked up a tiny bit. It's all within the margin of error. But the bottom line here is this just illustrates something we have known, but this really makes it rock solid. He's got a floor here that just is around that 37, 39%, and there's not anything that is going to push him below that. This shutdown was a real problem for him politically. At the same time, the Mueller investigation is happening, Roger Stone, and his numbers are still stable.
Well, I think that highlights the box he's in. You're right. I mean, this is all within the margin of error. So it says that his base is solid. And we all say that there's not anything that he could do that would, he said, I could walk down Fifth Avenue and murder people and they wouldn't care. He may have to test that if he decides to keep the government open, not declare a national emergency, and abandon his wall. Now, because that is a central principle of why his base supports him. So you understand his problem, which is most of the country isn't with him. Congress is no longer really with him. They won't shut the government down over this. He's got to make a choice. And for 2 years, he's never violated the principles that the base believe in. He has no good choices.
I don't know if he feels that pressure, Margaret, right now that he has to make this choice, because yes, those numbers do show that most Americans don't want to shut down, even for a wall if they support a wall. But as Berman just laid out, his approval number just doesn't move. I mean, it just doesn't seem to impact him like Teflon.
Yeah, and part of this, I think, Poppy, is that the president's a good showman. He understands what makes good TV. He doesn't want to show all of his cards before the State of the Union address. He wants to keep the drama and the tension sort of high. But I was in the cabinet room on Friday when he ended up doing one of these, supposed to be a quick pool spray, and it ends up being like a half-an-hour news conference. And it was interesting to listen to him test different messages on whether there's going to be a shutdown, whether he's going to do the emergency, whether it's going to be neither. He seemed to be, hinting with rhetoric that he was ready to pull the trigger on the national emergency, but he wouldn't quite let himself be pinned down. We saw this again in the CBS interview that actually was conducted the same day, even though it aired over the weekend. And also, he was testing the idea that he could just build a wall without doing either. Even if there wasn't a shutdown, or even if he didn't declare the emergency, he was already moving ahead with the wall, was another message he was working on. So I think, he's not sure. Is he really going to face pushback from Republicans? If these threats that the Republicans would jam him up on a national emergency panned out, would that be worth doing? I think he's trying to keep all of his options open because he understands this political box.
Let's play a little bit of the interview that the president did with Margaret Brennan, which aired before the Super Bowl, which the Patriots won. Let's listen.
Would you shut down the government again?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens on February 15th. And
you're not taking it off the table?
Well, I don't take anything off the table. I don't like to take things off the table. It's that alternative. It's national emergency. It's other things. And, there have been plenty national emergencies called. You need a wall. And anybody that says you don't, they're just playing game.
David, it's interesting, we're talking about the options that the president has here. It really does seem to me that this is headed toward one place and one place only, which is some kind of executive action that involves an emergency of some kind. He just doesn't seem willing to accept what Congress is going to come up with here, and everything he's doing seems to be laying the groundwork for the emergency.
John, that's my read of it also, but that doesn't necessarily solve his political problem. It does seem to be a bit of an off-ramp here to avoid another shutdown, which nobody, including the president, it seems to me, is at all interested in. I mean, they felt, the heat of the stove when they touched it, and I think that is clearly something everyone's going to try to avoid. But you have heard Republican after Republican come out and warn against this national emergency action, even if it is an off-ramp for the president sort of from the precipice here. You just saw in the polling numbers that we released, the country is opposed to it. It does indeed perhaps get him over the hump of February 15th. It obviously will be fought out in the courts, but I don't think it's going to be a long-term victory for him.
Let's turn the page here and talk about the executive time. David Chalian, let me just get you on this quickly. Axios exclusive reporting lays out, we have some images of it here, how the president spends his time. Nearly 60%, Axios reports, of his scheduled time is unstructured executive time. You see the comparisons there. The blue, obviously, is the executive time. What does he do during executive time? We know he likes to consume cable television news. David, the White House is not happy that this is out there, but beyond the leaking part of it, what's the significance of that to you?
Well, I mean, this is now sort of the data, Poppy, right, that matches the reporting that we had seen previously, that he does spend a ton of time in this, as you called it, unstructured time. And not only does he, yes, he's a big consumer of cable news, but he's also calling up aides. He's calling up various officials in his administration when he sees a story he doesn't like or he reads something. He is trying to figure out his way forward on various things. So it's not as if he's just sort of channel surfing, I would imagine. But we have not seen a president's schedule like this before, with that much unstructured time before they go down into the Oval Office.
And Margaret, the other thing that this does by having this executive time, it lets the White House slip things in there that aren't a matter of the public record, because the schedule is a matter of the public record later on. So we don't necessarily know what the president's doing here. Sometimes there could be meetings or phone calls or scheduled things of interest, of public interest, that we never hear about.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And we know that that's true because the president is concerned about internal leaks, and this kind of shows why he should be, right? But so he goes out of his way to keep stuff off of the triple private schedule that nobody except for 5 people are supposed to see, so that he has maneuvering room to do stuff that some of his aides either don't want him to do, would be telling other aides about, would be telling people on the outside might be leaking. That's part of it. I still think when you look at the visualization of this, it is just striking that, and many reporters, many of us who cover him know this, that he spends so much time trying to manage the optics and kind of the narrative rather than kind of getting nitty-gritty on the policy meetings, being in the room with people who are shaping the policies. But that really is true. The president is a very visual, television-minded president. For him, the messaging and how he splits that messaging between the base and kind of his political opposition and everyone else, he's constantly thinking about everything from lighting to getting one key line out into the atmosphere and repeating it. And that's, I think, how a lot of this executive time is playing out.
Joe, final thought on that.
Yeah, it's ironic. When I worked in the Clinton administration, we actually put in executive time to give the president time to read and think. When you look at it, it really is unprecedented, because we know a couple things about Donald Trump. He doesn't read. So he's not in there reading, intelligence reports and policy position papers and trying to decide where to take.
He did tell Margaret Brennan in the interview over the weekend that he read the entire IC report.
Yeah, well, that's 8,000.
She asked him point blank.
8,563 false statements. I can guarantee you he did not read that report. And we know from his actions, he spends a lot of time watching TV and tweeting. Again, it is an unprecedented presidency. It's one where he not only doesn't get into the details, he doesn't have a top-notch staff. He's got a bunch of sycophants there. He's pushed out a lot of the more professional people. And it really does, I think, leave the rest of the world wondering, what are they up to? And the other thing is, all presidents don't put things on the schedule because they don't want them to know. There's nothing unprecedented about that. The really big thing here is that I think he's doing nothing.
We don't know. Look, we don't know exactly what he's doing there. I think one thing is clear. This may work for him, but it is not a rigorous schedule. You cannot look at this and say this is a particularly rigorous schedule.
Maybe that's why he just said in the interview on CBS that he loves the job so much. It's not.
All right, David Chalian, great to have you, Margaret. Joe, appreciate it. Calls growing this morning for Virginia's governor to resign over the racist yearbook photo. Does his own staff support him staying in office? We have new reporting about
All right, welcome back to New Day in Battle. Virginia Governor Ralph Northam will meet with his cabinet this morning as calls for him to resign just grow louder and louder over that racist yearbook photo. Last night, he held an urgent meeting with several senior staff members of color. A source tells CNN no one in that meeting, no one urged him to fight this and stay. Let's bring in our Ryan Nobles, who's been all over this story, covers Virginia politics extensively. He joins us now. Ryan, walk us through, what you've learned about the meeting last night. And then, the team seems to be billing this as a Tolu Olorunnipa is also with us from the Washington Post. Tolu, good morning. But Ryan, to you first, and John Avalon. Look, I was up watching the Super Bowl.
I'm here too.
No, I wasn't.
I'm here too.
And John Berman's here. Just walk us through, if you could, Ryan, last night at the meeting, and what that means for the 9 a.m. meeting this morning.
Yeah, that's right, Poppy. And let me first say that I've covered Virginia politics for more than 10 years, including 7 years right here in Richmond. There's never been anything like this that has rocked Virginia politics. And I covered my fair share of gubernatorial controversies, but this one is far beyond anything anyone has ever dealt with. And you're right, last night's meeting was important. We're told that the governor is assessing this situation on a minute-by-minute and day-by-day status. And part of what he's trying to figure out here is whether or not he can continue to govern effectively. And the second he believes that he's lost that ability, that's when he'll make the decision to resign. And that was part of what that meeting was last night. It was essentially a fact-finding mission to find out if the people under his charge, the people that he's appointed and should be the closest to him, no longer have his confidence and believe that he should step down. And you're right, while there wasn't necessarily this groundswell of support for him to stick it out, there was also not a mass exodus. We've not seen any resignations from some of these key folks that work under the governor. And that's why this morning's staff meeting and cabinet meeting that begins at 9 o'clock this morning is going to be so important. That's where the governor is going to get a real sense of where the people that work for him stand and how long this can go on. But Poppy, I want to make it clear here that the governor's desire is to stay in office. He firmly believes that he is not one of the two people in this racist photo. He believes that he's not responsible for it, and he wants the time and space to make that case to the folks here in Virginia's government. However, there are very few political leaders that seem to have the tolerance to put up with that. That's why today is going to be so crucial.
The governor wants to stay in office, but it may be this morning that he is the only one, along with his wife, who wants that. Again, because the reporting out of that meeting is there wasn't a person in there who said, stick this out, we're going to circle the wagons around you. And part of the issue is the original offense, the racist photo on his yearbook page, whether he was in it or not, his handling of it also, though, Tolu, is just raising so many questions about Democrats, where at first he said it was him, he apologized, and the next day he said it wasn't him, but he did wear blackface as Michael Jackson. People saw this statement, what he said about Michael Jackson, and they were just scratching their heads. Listen to this.
I had the shoes, I had a glove, and I used just a little bit of shoe polish to put under on my cheeks. And the reason I used a very little bit is because I don't know if anybody's ever tried that, but you cannot get shoe polish off. But it was a dance contest. I had always liked Michael Jackson. I actually won the contest because I had learned how to do the moonwalk.
Are you still able to moonwalk?
Inappropriate circumstances.
My wife says inappropriate circumstances.
Listen to your wife, Governor, because that's a what not to do in crisis management blueprint, Tolu, along with just, again, the aspect of the overt racism in that photo.
Yeah, this is a case of too much information, where less probably would have been more in terms of the description of the blackface incident in the Michael Jackson incident, where he's talking about using shoe polish and winning the dance contest. This is just, not very, it doesn't really make sense given the gravity of the circumstances and the gravity of the number of people asking him to resign. It made a lot of Democrats feel like the governor wasn't aware of how serious a situation this is. Now, it does appear that he's trying to dig in and see if he can ride this out. He is a man without a party at this point. The party faithful within the Democratic Party have all left him en masse, basically, and called for his resignation. There were several people calling for his lieutenant governor to start making preparations to be the next governor of Virginia. But if he does decide to stick this out and just fight and keep doing this until maybe this blows over. It would be difficult, I think, for Democrats to push him out of office. The impeachment route is there's a very high bar for that, and it would be difficult for Republicans and Democrats because it'd have to be a bipartisan effort there to say that this is malfeasance in office. And I think that may be what he's relying on at this point, the fact that it's his decision and his decision alone whether or not to stay in office.
Unless he lied. I mean, unless it's proven that he lied, that it wasn't him in the photo. I don't know. Tolu says, John, he's a man without a party. But does he hurt the party if he stays in office, and how much?
Well, I think it blurs the lines that Democrats have been trying to create between themselves and the Republican Party. And their response has been to go in hard and say, look, he should resign. There's no prevaricating on this. We're gonna apply the exact same standards we would if this were found out to be a Republican. That's, of course, entirely appropriate. That's the way politics should be run, when usually it's sort of this situational ethics we see. But you know, this story is so surreal, not only because the history of this, and people can create a lot of flexibility for mistakes people make as a young person and the way they live their lives as an adult. But this is so stark. This is not just blackface, but the KKK on a 24-year-old medical student's page. And then he compounds it with this, one of the worst press conferences in modern American political history, showing an absence of judgment. So it's no wonder that everyone, and I mean almost literally everyone in the Democratic Party, is telling him to get off the stage and have the lieutenant governor, who's African-American, take over.
But to the point you made at the beginning, I think is interesting, which is Democrats now have taken a sort of zero-tolerance policy. Al Franken felt that before, and now this, where all the Democratic presidential candidates are saying get out. How important is it for them to maintain this? In order for them to do what they want to do against President Trump in 2020, how much do they have to go on this?
This is comparatively clean and clear-cut compared to what happened to Al Franken. I think they've made a decision. It's the right decision. They need to stick with it. They need to draw that contrast very clearly. Look, neither party has a monopoly on virtue or vice. What you can do is change the way you deal with it, and not simply try to defend, quote unquote, your guy because he's got, you know, an R after his name or a D after his name.
Tolu, to you, where do you think this goes, and how critical are the next 24 hours?
Yeah, this is going to be a critical period for the governor to make a very tough decision about whether or not he wants to be defined by this issue or he wants to drag down his party in sort of a long, drawn-out fight over this issue. This is something that could really define much of the party for the year if this continues on and if this fight continues on and if he sees resignations, if he sees calls for his impeachment. So he has to really make a decision about whether or not he wants to be a part of that, whether or not he wants to try to fight this and restore some of his legacy by fighting for maybe criminal justice issues or civil rights issues in the governor's mansion over the next few years. That's something that he's going to have to decide. And if we do start to see resignations, if we do start to see maybe other people in the Democratic Party, President Obama hasn't spoken out yet, his lieutenant governor so far hasn't called for his resignation. But if we do start to see more Democrats call for his resignation, this could become a situation where he has no choice but to resign. But for now, it seems like he's trying to dig in and fight.
It's interesting. President Obama, if I remember correctly, did do a high-profile rally for Ralph Northam in Virginia during the campaign. So it will be interesting to see if and when he weighs in.
That's a good point. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. European leaders uniting to back Venezuela's opposition leader as President Trump weighs in on whether he would meet with Nicolas Maduro. The latest on the crisis in Venezuela is ahead.
The State of the Union address. President Trump in Nancy Pelosi's house with the threat of another government shutdown in the air. The State of the Union address. Special live coverage.
Leaders are uniting to recognize opposition leader Juan Guaido as Venezuela's president as Nicolas Maduro rejects a Sunday deadline from European nations to hold free elections. CNN's Isa Suarez is live in neighboring Colombia with the very latest. Good morning.
Good morning to you, John. That's right. Spain, France, the UK, Germany, Portugal, among many other European countries, have recognized National Assembly leader Juan Guaido as the interim president of Venezuela, adding yet more pressure on Nicolas Maduro to either call presidential elections, which he hasn't until now, or really step aside but it seems he's not going anywhere. He's trying to project power. He's been projecting placidity in the last couple of days and sounding extremely defiant. In an interview on Spanish television, he said he could not rule out the possibility, he said, of civil war. He also said that he does not take to ultimatums, that message directly to Europe. He then had a message to US President Donald Trump. He told President Trump that if he interfered in Venezuela's affairs, he could end his presidency with his hands stained with blood. He also went on to accuse the United States and President Trump of a drone attack on him on August of last year. This all coming on the same day that President Trump had this to say on Venezuela. Take a listen.
What would make you use the U.S. military in Venezuela? What's the national security
Well, I don't want to say
interest?
that, but certainly it's something that's on the it's an option.
Well, President Trump in that same interview said he turned down a meeting with the leader of Venezuela, and he also said the reason he turned down a meeting with Maduro is because what he's seeing in Venezuela in the young leader is democracy in action. And whilst the rhetoric is ramping up, the reality is the people in the streets are in dire need of help. Between 250,000 and 300,000, says Guaido, people need almost at the point of dying because of medicine shortages. Poppy?
Should not be like that. Issa, thank you for bringing us the latest from the ground. We appreciate it. Ahead, President Trump not ruling out another government shutdown as the deadline to reach a deal quickly approaches. How do his fellow Republicans feel about
There are less than 2 weeks for Congress to pass another spending bill, or the U.S. faces the prospect of a new government shutdown. President Trump is not ruling that out as he considers declaring a national emergency to fund the border wall that he wants. Joining us now is Republican Senator Rick Scott. Up until a few weeks ago, he was the governor of Florida. Senator Scott joins us now from Puerto Rico, where he's getting an update on recovery efforts after Hurricane Maria. Senator Scott, thank you very much for being with us. We played the sound earlier in the show where the president said that he doesn't want to take the idea of a shutdown off the table. Are you glad he's leaving the door open to the possibility of another shutdown?
So I don't want to shut down. I have no interest in another shutdown. I also don't understand why we're not having real conversations about funding our border security. You know, we have to do both. We don't want a government shutdown. We expect our government to work. And number two is we expect our border to be secure. So I don't know why we can't do this together. I just did an op-ed piece last week about this. There seems to be on the Democrat side a lot of hatred for the president, and everybody's got to come together here. And on top of that, we got to take care of the DACA kids. We can do all these things. I went to D.C. to get something done.
There is a bipartisan, bicameral committee actually meeting to discuss border security, and they will make proposals that do fund border security. In fact, the Democrats say, this is their argument, in December, they offered $1.3 billion in border security. They are for border security, they say. What they are not for is a border wall, and that's what the president won't rule out shutting the government down over again.
Well, I went and met with border security, or Customs Border Security, about a week and a half ago, and it takes all these things. It takes more people, it takes technology, and it takes barriers. Now, you can call it whatever you want, but you have to have all those things if you want to secure a border. And I don't know why they're talking about $1.3 billion when you look at the whole project. You ask border security what they need. It's in excess of $20 billion. We have to take this seriously, and Americans want a secure border. This is not it shouldn't be a political issue. We want our government to work, and we want our border secure.
Americans do want a secure border. The polls typically show that more Americans do not want the border wall per se than do, but they absolutely do want border security. One option for the president is to declare an emergency. You have said at this point you would support that.
Well, here's the way I look at it. Look, it's not the first goal I want. I don't want presidents to have to use emergency power. I didn't like it when Barack Obama did it for the DACA kids because he didn't go through and try to get it done legislatively through Congress. The president has proposed things, and Nancy Pelosi has said there's not going to be any money for a wall. That's not a negotiation. We know that. Let me talk about Florida for a second. We did a poll, Hispanics in Florida, 69% of them want stricter enforcement of our immigration laws. This is not a political issue. This is what all Americans want, but it's not $1.3 billion. So if I was the president, I'd sit there and say, what are my options? If Congress won't do their job, then if he has the power, then he should use the power to fund the border security. And I think on top of that, he ought to take care of DACA kids. We need to have a permanent solution to border security and our DACA kids and temporary protection for a lot of people who have come from other countries during crisis.
Just one point of clarification. President Obama and the Democrats and Republicans, including Marco Rubio, your senator, did try to work out a deal in 2013 to pass legislation that would add billions in border security and take care of the DACA kids. So legislation was attempted there before President Obama at that point took executive action. One last question. You're in Puerto Rico, obviously, where the rebuilding efforts are so active and necessary and in some cases still in need and in want. You said before you don't want the president to declare executive action that would take disaster funding from Puerto Rico, correct?
Absolutely. I don't believe you look at the wildfires in California, you look at the hurricanes in Texas and Florida and here. This money needs to be allocated by the federal government. We pay our taxes. Puerto Rico pays their taxes. And so we need to have a federal government that does the right thing. My first amendment as a senator was to make sure we got disaster relief for Puerto Rico. What was in the House side of the shutdown bill, but not in the Senate side. And so I came here 8 times as a governor. This is my first time here as a senator. I meet with the governor, lieutenant governor, a bunch of business leaders, the Speaker of the House, and say, what are your needs? How can I be helpful? I will work hard to be the voice for Puerto Rico in the U.S. Senate.
And it is important that you are there on the island talking to those leaders and finding out what is needed there at this point. Senator Scott, as I said, up until a month ago or so, you were a governor. Governor Ralph Northam of Virginia is taking a lot of heat this morning for the racist photo that was on his medical school yearbook page. Should he resign? What should Governor Northam do now?
Well, I think he clearly should resign. The pictures are horrible. But on top of that, what he said about a new baby that possibly would not be taken care of to make sure he survived after birth is disgusting. I am absolutely pro-life, but I think anybody would. I mean, I have 6 grandsons. I love my family, and I just can't imagine somebody would say after a child's born that we're going to decide whether they're going to live or not. That's disgusting.
Again, what he's going to resign over potentially, or what he's facing heat over now, is the racist yearbook photo. Governor Northam, and take it for what it is, says that on that radio show when he was talking about abortion, he was talking about in cases where the fetus or the baby was not viable. On Governor Northam and the racist photo, do you think there's a different standard for Democrats who are involved with racist or sexist activity and Republicans? Obviously, the president didn't resign or drop out after the Access Hollywood tape, so why should it be different for Governor Northam now if he says that it's not him in that photo?
Well, first off, there shouldn't be a different standard for anybody. But I think he should resign on the photos and what he said with regard to the abortion. So I think it's disgusting what he said about abortion.
Senator Rick Scott of Florida, thank you for joining us from Puerto Rico. Thank you for being there, as we said, to see the situation on the ground for yourself. We'll talk to you again soon. Poppy?
Yeah, really important that he is there doing that. All right, so if you haven't heard, good morning, everyone. A big night for Tom Brady and JB, John Berman, as the Patriots dynasty. All right, millions in the central U.S. facing, I'm so sorry, another blast of snow and ice this week while the Northeast warms up a bit from the polar vortex. Let's go to our meteorologist, Chad Myers, with your forecast. I just feel for my family in Minnesota, Chad.
I know. It's still, Bismarck is 7 below. Even Minneapolis right now is 30, although it's going to get colder behind that front. Yes, but the Northeast finally is thawing out. This weather is brought to you by Boost Nutritional Drink. Be up for life. Be up this morning because temperatures are nice. In fact, Chicago, you're 60 degrees warmer than you were 4 days ago. Right now, 60 degrees. Just think about that. Put that in your head just for a second and think about how summer is going to be warming up. Here comes the rainfall for tomorrow across the Northeast, though. But it's a warm front. In fact, 2 2 warm fronts that will approach the Northeast that will warm things up. You're not going to get to you in the Northwest and also into the Midwest. It's not going to quite get there. There's going to be snow up there. Quite a bit of snow, too. But this is wintertime for Minnesota. You expect that. But look at this. For D.C. on Thursday, how's 70 degrees sound? Sounds like spring. Go Punxsutawney Phil. John, back to you.
All right, Chad Myers, thank you so much for that. 5 people are dead after a small plane crashed into a California home. Officials say the pilot was killed along with 4 people inside the house. The FAA says the aircraft had just taken off from a nearby airport before the plane fell out of the sky. The NTSB is investigating the cause of this crash.
Well, power has been restored at a federal detention center in Brooklyn, New York, after inmates were left shivering in their cells for days due to a partial power outage there. A U.S. representative who visited that facility says the temperature was as low inside as 49 degrees. Prison officers were said to be working while wearing coats and hats and scarves, of course, things the inmates don't have. A fire in the room housing the electrical switches caused the outage there.
Stephen Colbert scored some big laughs after the Super Bowl, which the Patriots won. Here are your late night laughs.
It's our one true national holiday. This is the one day when, despite our divisions, Americans come together around their TVs. And for just one beautiful moment, don't fast forward through the commercials. Another annual tradition is the pregame presidential interview. Last year, Trump skipped the interview, but Friday he sat down with Margaret Brennan of CBS's Face the Nation.
When you have people dying all over the country because of people like Nancy Pelosi who don't want to give proper border security for political reasons, she's doing a terrible disservice to our country. And on the 15th, we have now set the table beautifully.
Not a hopeful sign, because we all know what it looks like when Trump sets the table beautifully. We're barely a month into 2019. We've already got at least 10 different candidates hoping to secure the Democratic Party's nomination. Booker's taken a real risk with the name of his campaign, Corey 2020. Bold move, going with the first name. If you'll recall, that did not work out too well for Jeb 2016.
That exclamation point lives in infamy.
Forever and ever.
All right, on the eve of the State of the Union address, a new CNN poll shows where President Trump stands. That's next.
The highest motivation to ensure that his legacy is not defined by a picture in his yearbook.
And there it is. The dynasty continues.
The hard work we put in this year was just paid off for sure.
It was unreal. I mean, it was like a home game.
This is New Day with Allison Camarada and John Berman.
All right, good morning and welcome to your new day. Allison is off. Poppy Harlow is with me, regretting it already.
And Berman cannot stop smiling, let me tell you.
It's hard. All right, 6 and counting. All of you are going to hate me even more for saying that. The New England Patriots won their 6th Super Bowl, a 13-3 victory over the Los Angeles Rams. It was the lowest scoring Super Bowl ever, and it felt like it. Patriots receiver